For over 200 years, patriotic citizens just like you have struggled and sacrificed to ensure that freedom, liberty, and equality are more than just words, that they're real and meaningful cornerstones of this great experiment called democracy. Unfortunately, today's politicians have made these ideas nothing more than empty promises. What's worse, they have the temerity to invoke them while conspiring to take away the very thing that makes our freedom, liberty, and equality possible: our right to vote for the candidate of our choice. Make no mistake, your voting rights are being threatened. Luckily, you can do something about it, but you must do it now. Money is king in our current electoral process. In return for campaign contributions, politicians turn a blind eye, while big business engages in practices that both negatively affect our country and line their pockets. Democrat, Republican, it makes no difference. They try to get us to choose one side or the other, but it's just a smokescreen. We get sucked into the Democrat versus Republican debate, and in the meantime, lose sight of the fact that nothing is changing for the better. Of course, in order to stay in power, the Democrats and Republicans must ensure that elections go their way. You've heard of people being turned away in Florida, the lack of ballot boxes in Ohio. However, perhaps the biggest miscarriage of justice, one that most Americans don't even know about, is ballot access laws. These policies may sound like small potatoes in the context of our bigger political picture, but they do make a difference in your daily life. How? Quite simply, the so-called democratically elected politicians who devise them get in power and stay in power. Consider this rather sobering fact. There was more turnover in the Soviet Politburo under communism than there is in the American Congress. Here are just a few examples among the many of unfair ballot practices created by the Democrats and Republicans. In some states, candidates must gather hundreds of thousands of signatures, and in some cases, the gatherers of those signatures, not the signers themselves, must be from the state in question. Many signatures are thrown out due to technicalities. If there is one invalid signature, the whole page on which it appears is thrown out. In Pennsylvania, if the petition does not have enough signatures, then the candidate must pay court costs upwards of $100,000. In North Carolina, there has never been an independent on the ballot, nor has there in Georgia, since the laws were changed making it more difficult to get on the ballot. In Oklahoma, you can't even write in a candidate other than the two options chosen by the Democrat and Republican parties. In fact, it's easier to get on the ballot in all the countries in the world except two than it is in many U.S. states. And with congressional approval ratings the lowest in history, both parties are terrified that voters will begin to look outside the current two-party system for leadership and are making ballot access laws even tougher as we speak. In fact, the National Office of the Reform Party has recently been closed. Even if a third-party candidate does manage to get on the ballot, all their time and resources have been squandered fighting or trying to meet unfair ballot access requirements, not getting their name and message out. And finally, you'd think that once third-party candidates have gone through the entire process successfully, that it would be automatic the next time. Not the case. Unlike the Democrats and Republicans, third parties must re-qualify before each election in many states, which means hitting the streets again, collecting thousands of signatures over and over and over, just to give us a choice. It's the duty of every citizen to make sure that viable candidates have access to the ballot, not just a few insiders who are cherry-picked by the Democrats and Republicans. There are legitimate solutions to many of the catastrophic problems faced in our country, so long as money and greed are not factors. And luckily, there are also serious third-party candidates who could make a real difference. But time is running out. Our problems are getting worse, and given the fragile state of our country and our environment, the solutions that are viable today won't be possible in 2012. So, will the right person for the job be on your ballot? Only you can decide.